What's good, good people? And welcome to episode 36 of It's Just Not Adding Up. With that same logic, I would be straight.
I'm OBO, and over the years I've noticed gay is a scary word for a lot of people, which is wild because it's just gay. But don't worry, I've decided to be your gay coach. Everyone's talking about equality and love, but I don't know, it's just not adding up.
You see the title, let's just get right into it. Let's get a definition on the books. So the gay agenda is a term introduced by sectors of the Christian religious right as a disparaging way to describe the advocacy of cultural acceptance and normalization of non-heterosexual orientations and relationships. So often when we hear people talk about the gay agenda and people who are pushing it, those of us who are visibly queer, I think there's this idea that we are trying to make people gay.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay.
So I want to keep it honest in this video. Society has convinced most of us that being gay is wrong, right? And if being gay is wrong and being gay is who you are, how does who you are become right? And so for a lot of us, we decided, whether it was early on, midway through, we decided that our proximity to straightness was our way to maintain this idea of being right. If I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to add a lot more right to the pot, so my wrong doesn't seem quite as wrong. And which, of course, is not a foolproof plan because it's very difficult to then be right and wrong at the same time. But here we are foundationally. There's this idea that we are trying our best to be right in the midst of being what society says is wrong. So the internalized idea of being wrong, a lot of us rejected everything that we thought was queer. We tried our best to be as straight as possible. And even those of us who are walking in our truth, right, still had an issue in the beginning with maintaining where that can exist, right? Like, where can I be in my fullness? Where can I take my fullness? Is it to family reunions, or do I take a pause? Is it to work, or do I take a pause? Is it to, spaces with friends, or do I take a pause? These days, I'm often talking about how a lot of people treat their queerness like a jacket, right? We take it on and take it off as necessary. And I think because a lot of people have been relegated to being in the bedroom and that being the only space in which they can be queer and comfortable, it then created this idea that those people who are gay keep it behind closed doors. And so for years, it's been the idea that everything that happens within queerness is underground. So you don't get to maintain queerness in the light. You get to be queer in your bedroom, you get to be queer in dark spaces. But the problem with queerness only being able to exist in darkness and or our bedrooms is this idea that we are not only queer in those spaces. We are not only queer at night, and we are not only queer within our bedroom. Therein lies this juxtaposition. How do we then be wrong and right at the same time? So a lot of us are really winging what it looks like to even be queer because we have no examples, because again, queer has been relegated to night activity. It's been relegated to bedrooms. And so for those of us who are walking in our fullness and who have found our way to exist and find words and put them in the mouth and then exude our fullness, right? Like, then where do we go? So when you then find ways to then reject the idea that you are wrong and live in your fullness boldly and proudly, then it gives other people that same opportunity to live in their fullness boldly and proudly. But now we're giving people the opportunity to be what society has called wrong. Then comes this idea of pushing this gay agenda, pushing it on to people. But the thing about agendas, one of my good friends just told me this, is agendas are planned. Most of us are winging it. Most of us have had no examples of what queerness looks like, has had very little examples about what queer love, queer relationships, any of it looks like, because reality is, even in my generation alone, when I was young, there was nobody on TV that I could look at to say, oh, okay, this is who I can be. And again, this wasn't to ignite a queer flame. It was already queer. This was to then say, where do I go to be in my fullness? Where do I go to feel safe? Where do I go and who do I look to be myself? I already know who I am, but how do I be it? Which are two very different things. And I think it's a very difficult concept for cishet people to understand, because you're able to grow up in a society that affirms you from birth and makes space for you. Like, paves ways for you to find romance, for you to find love, for you to find friendship, for you to find work, for you to find peace, happiness, joy, fun. All that is aligned for you. But for those of us who are queer, we spend so much of our time rejecting self, then finding self, then owning self, then to figure out what to do with all that. Really, the queer agenda is, how dare you make those people who we decided, once again, are wrong, feel like they're right. It's not about people trying to push queerness on anybody. In my personal opinion, you can't make anyone gay, because to be honest, if that was the case with that same logic, I would be straight. Because all I was ingesting my entire life was straightness through media, through family, through school. Everything around me perpetuated the idea of straightness. And so the idea that you see two men interacting with themselves in a loving way then becomes this idea that I'm pushing or I'm vying for other people to be queer is a stretch.
Suck it in, up with your arms, and then bend slowly to the side.
And those who push this gay agenda narrative, I have to be honest, I consider that to be homophobia. Like, I don't know how it can be anything else. If someone feels like you are doing too much by creating spaces for people who are queer to be able to be comfortable in their queerness, what other word do we have for it if not homophobia?
I'm waiting.
Every time I talk about homophobia, I always have to talk about people who are mean, because to me the two go hand in hand. I think to be homophobic is to be mean, essentially, because I think people are not unaware of what it means to suppress someone. I don't care where you're from. I don't care how much privilege you experience. You understand what it's like to be suppressed in some way. Maybe some know better than others, some know more than others, but this idea that you are unbeknownst to what it means to be, for some parts of you to not be welcome, for some parts of you to not be, affirmed, some parts of you to not be celebrated. You know all too well what that is like. And so for you to infringe that upon somebody else, homophobic, yes, but it's also mean. The fact that people have to go through leaps and bounds to find spaces in which they can experience comfort is beyond me. And so this idea that people who are allowing people to simply be themselves is pushing this agenda to make people queer, when the reality is a lot of queer people have allowed a lot of straight people to maintain their straightness. If you want to be brutally honest, there is a spectrum here. I believe I exist on a very extreme part of the spectrum, very, very close to fully gay. But in the midst of this spectrum idea, right, a lot of people, especially in young ages, have experienced moments of queerness. And in those moments, a lot of queer people, I'm gonna go on a limb here, a lot of queer people have made a lot of space for people to then maintain their straightness in the midst of confusion, which a lot of us have experienced. We act like being confused about your sexual identity is something that only queer people experience, and I don't believe that to be true. I will go on another limb here and say most people experience some level of, what am I? Who am I? Where am I? Where do I want to be? Who do I want to be?
Who and who?
But this idea that we're the only people who knows what self-discovery is also very untrue and very unfair. We all go through this idea of like, who do I want to be? Who am I intrinsically? Who do I feel like I've been conditioned to be? Who do they want me to be? Who do I, all these different factors. Can't really get behind the whole gay agenda idea. If anything, it's a freedom agenda. People are committed to allowing people the space to be free, to be whomever they are. I guess my biggest question for society is, what do you want queer people to do? Like, all in all, where do you want them to exist? Like, you want them to be off the radar? You want them to, like, a lot of people who say things like, oh, I'm not homophobic, I don't mind, this, I don't mind that, but this is too far, and that's too much, and it's very small things that are too far. He was breathing, that's a little bit too much. I don't know if I can really kind of get with gay people breathing in public. I think that's kind of a little weird. Or he made a song that said guy, and I just don't know if that's just too much for me. So what is the expectation of queer people? I get it. A lot of queer people have given cishet people the opportunity to be homophobic without any allowance. We have let you guys say things and we still made a space for you. We allowed you guys to do things and we still made space for you, which is why I think queer people are some of the most empathetic people you'll ever meet, because we've had to make room for people who have made no room for us, essentially, right? We had to make space for our parents who said homophobic things, and our cousins, and our uncles, and our family members, and our teachers, and our friends, because we're not an island. We can't live on this world by ourselves. And so we've, again, had to be, 5 people or a suppressed self for so long to then allow ourselves to have what we are compartmentalizing as love, which is really a lot of times tolerance. But if we're talking from a humanity perspective, do you really want people to not be able to be their full selves in the same way in which you get to be your full self? Like, do you not want people to be able to enjoy love and family and friends and all the things that you enjoy in the way in which they would like to enjoy it? Which is why, again, homophobia to me is mean. But Hey, call it what you want. But anyways, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this whole idea of a gay agenda. It's really frustrating every time I hear the term. It's really annoying every time I hear it because it just seems so bunch of things. But anyways, if you don't know anything else about me, you know I'm huge on community. Don't let anybody bully you out of finding your community, out of creating your community, and out of being in your fullness. Gay agenda or whatever they try to spew, blah. Be in your fullness, love on yourself, love on the people around you. From my lips to your ears, I know what it's like to find your way to freedom. Been there. Don't let anybody bully you out of that experience. Don't let anybody bully you out of your fullness. Don't let anybody bully you out of basking in all the things that you are. Because I know what it took to get there. Trust me. So gay agenda is a bunch of hoopla. Forget what all that, I don't even, blah. Keep loving yourself. Keep loving on the people around you. Keep being visibly whoever you are. Keep doing you. Keep creating space. And I'll see you guys in episode 37. Peace.